Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Whitney Combs, is a national board certified health and wellness coach and former physician assistant who helps women change their relationship with alcohol and build lives they no longer feel the need to escape from. After getting sober in 2017, Whitney transitioned from clinical medicine into coaching so she could support people through a more holistic, whole person approach to healing and behavioral change. Whitney's coaching style blends practical tools, nervous system support, and compassionate accountability to help women create freedom, self-trust, and lasting change. Whitney, we have a lot of good things to talk about today. So,
yes, we do.
Starting off, you were a physician assistant before. So throwing it back to childhood, if you feel comfortable answering, what was your childhood like, or what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I like to start off tough. Yes.
Yeah, right. So I had a great childhood. I really did. I had very supportive parents. I'm an only child, and everything that insinuates. I am, I like my stuff. I like my space. I like my alone time and all that good stuff. And when I think about how I landed in medicine and as a physician assistant, it really is not something that I grew up wanting to do. I think when I was little, I had aspirations. I was in theater. And so I had some aspirations in that direction. And of course, my parents, who are very supportive, said, that's a tough row to hoe. And so they were lovingly pushing me in different directions. And I was a nanny in college, and the family I was a nanny for, the mother of the family actually had, I think, a colleague that worked at the local physician assistant school or at the program. And she kind of introduced me to PA work. And it was intriguing to me because since I was little, I'd love to help people. I was a babysitter. I loved to be around people and really just kind of give some compassion and help lift people up in that way. And so the PA role kind of fit that bill. I also have a pretty good mind for science. And so combining those two things seemed about perfect. And it was great for a long time. I loved being a PA, but definitely not something I've wanted since childhood.
That's so interesting because I feel like you always have like a parent or a family member, but that's an incredible story of someone you babysat for, of introducing you to that. And that ends up being the career path you go down. So at what point did you decide, and throwing it back to 2017, I mean, what was going on at that time, if you feel comfortable sharing, that you decided to go on this completely, kind of adjacent career path of coaching?
Yeah. Well, a lot of that has to do with my struggle with drinking. And so if it's okay, I'll kind of intertwine that
Absolutely.
as well as I answer. So I had been working clinically as a physician assistant in neurology, specializing in seizures and sleep disorders, which was incredibly interesting and incredibly time consuming because I was on call at the hospital and having to do, a lot of overnight shifts and those kinds of things. And so when I got pregnant with my first child, I decided I needed something with a little more flexibility. And so I moved into PA education. And so I worked in a master's level PA program teaching psychiatry, women's health, and a lot of physical diagnosis kind of classes. I did that for about 8 years and loved it. As I progressed in that part of my career, the pressures to start doing things that I didn't really want to do got big. And those things were publishing, not something I'm interested in really, or was interested in at all. And they also wanted me to go back to clinical work. And I didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it. I had been there, done that. And it made sense, right? They want people who have relevant current experience teaching the next generation of PAs. So I totally get it, but not something I wanted to do. And so there was a lot of pressure there in that job. And so in 2016, my drinking really escalated. I think as a result, in part, of that pressure. And also, I was raising 4 school-age children at the time in a blended family. And, there was just a lot happening. And so in 2016, my drinking kind of went from a kind of dysfunctional relationship because I had always kind of been a binge drinker and blacking out, thinking it was normal, that kind of thing. But my drinking really ramped up. And I got to the point where I was drinking probably a bottle and a half of wine a night just to unwind and come down. Binge drinking on the weekends just to let loose and let off some steam. And it got to the point where I was doing some things that were really, unsafe, I guess is the best way to put that. And those are stories I'm happy to tell, but I don't know if your listeners are really wanting to hear those stories because they're pretty gruesome, some of them. But anyway, so things kind of went off the rails and I decided that I needed to leave my position teaching, thinking that that would, be the magical cure. That would be the magic pill that would get my drinking under control. So I gracefully exited the PA education world. And without really knowing what I was going to do next, I actually had visions at that point in my life of being a children's yoga teacher. So I had my adult certification, I got a children's certification, and I started going around to preschools to teach in preschools and discovered real fast that I loved my preschoolers. I didn't like anybody else's preschoolers.
So that's fair.
that kind of nosedived. But anyway, that was all kind of happening as my drinking was continuing. And so clearly leaving the university was not the magic bullet to get my drinking under control. And so there were a couple of times in 2016 that things had gotten to the point where I was visiting rehab facilities and, considering an inpatient treatment. I never had the courage to pull the trigger, which, I look back on that and I'm like, man, it takes so much courage to do that.
So hard.
It's so fucking hard. And I love people who have the courage to take that step. And I didn't find it at the time. But I did have a night, it was actually January 2nd of 2017. And nothing had happened on New Year's Eve. In fact, I had a head cold, wasn't feeling great. Woke up on January 2nd, still not feeling good. My husband took the kids, or woke up on January 1st, still not feeling good. My husband took the kids to the pool so I could rest and relax. What did I do? I went on the back porch and I drank 2 bottles of wine. So that was my rest and relaxing, right? And so I got up the next morning and I had to be done. Like I just knew somewhere, nothing horrible happened again, but somewhere in my gut, I'm like, I have to be done. And so I searched yoga and recovery. And I'm answering more than your question. I hope that's okay.
No, you are doing great. Go for it. Yo, you're great. No rules.
I searched yoga and recovery because I was, again, really into yoga at the time, still am, and found Holly Whitaker. And she actually later wrote Quit Like a Woman, which became a New York Times bestseller. She's a really well thought of in this space. But anyway, I found her at the time. She was not an author, but she was running little 8-week coaching programs to help women stop drinking. And just so happened, I think it was a Tuesday that I did that search on my computer. And that Thursday night, she was holding a webinar to, I know, crazy, right?
Crazy, yes.
Yeah, to promote her next 8-week course. And I remember laying in bed with my husband, just sobbing and thinking, I don't know if I can do this. And it was like $500. I'm like, can I spend that kind of money on this? Which is hilarious given how much money I was spending on wine. Like that was, of course, $500.
Money differently, right? It's like, right. Yeah, I get, and it's
entertainment money was separate.
Yes, absolutely, totally agree.
Yeah, sobbing, but finally made the decision to pull that trigger. Got into her program, ate it up. I absolutely loved it. I loved how she approaches recovery. I loved just the format of her program. Everything was amazing and a perfect fit for me. And so I dove in with everything in me and just did all the things to get sober, all the things that she recommended that we do, which I can talk about later if you want. And stayed in touch with Holly because I just absolutely, again, loved what she was doing. Stayed in touch with her. And then she ended up starting a company called Tempest that was geared toward alcohol education and helping people, there were men in the program too, renegotiate their relationship with alcohol. And she hired me as the third employee to come in and build coaching curriculum for her. I wasn't a coach at the time. And she was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it. So that was a big leap of faith. And I ended up going on to get a couple of coaching certifications and did that also while I was there so I could help build this program. That was kind of the trajectory of my professional world. And then Tempest got bought out by another company and leadership was not really aligned anymore with my idea of how things should roll. And so I stepped away to be a one-on-one coach and to start my own private practice.
Now, what was it that stuck with this program? Because I've had friends, I've had family members, clients, I mean, people that have been successful with recovery or just still struggling with it of like, yeah, I did the work or yeah, I did this program and yeah, it's whatever and blow it off and don't feel it work. So what was it that worked for Holly's program that kept you lifelong member in a sense?
I think part of it was me. Part of it was that I was ready. And I think you can't really change behavior until you're ready to change behavior. There's a whole science behind the stages of change, and you've got to be in that ready to take action phase if you want lasting sobriety. And so it happened, I think the stars aligned that I found her program at that moment when I was really ready to make a change. But she laid everything out so beautifully. And there was a lot, I think probably the biggest influence was that she really wove in a lot of science. And so, as I said, I'm science minded. And so that really appealed to me. And so I ate up all the science behind addiction and recovery and just loved that piece and really came to this place where I began to understand that it wasn't my fault. The addiction was not my fault, but it was my responsibility. And that's a phrase that Laura McCowan, who's also really big in this space, uses a lot. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And so I took responsibility for it. And when I say I jumped in and did all the things, I was meditating, I was journaling, I was throwing tarot cards. I mean, things that I still do as part of my recovery journey. But I think it was that science piece and then just the way she kind of organized things and had us add little habits at a time so that they would be sticky. It wasn't like, here are all the things you've got to do, go do it. It was more like, okay, let's start this week with hot lemon water in the morning and 3 minutes of quiet time. And then the next week she would layer on something else. And then the next week she would layer on something else. And so it was that kind of stepwise approach, I think, that really appealed to me and really made it sticky for me.
That's great. And I like that approach too, because a lot of programs, for alcohol or not, it's across the board. It's here's all the things you need to do. And it's like, yeah, I'm so jazzed up to do them. And then when you're on your own, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I know I could speak from that from experience, but
me too.
It's crazy. It's like, oh, you branch out on your own. I mean, that was a tough decision to make. So how long have you been on your own? And what was that journey like of deciding, you know what, I'm going to do it myself?
It was a tough decision. Leaving Tempest was really, it was gut wrenching for me. Because like I said, I was the third employee. I grew up in that program or in that company in a sense. But again, I knew in my heart when Holly left and was no longer leadership at the company, I knew that I couldn't stay there. I had to find something different. And so at that point, I considered briefly going back into clinical work, and it just didn't feel right to me. And so my husband and I sat down and we had some pretty tough conversations. Like, can we make this work? Can I make a go of this? What am I going to have to do to make this work? And I mean, those conversations, when I look back on them, are kind of hilarious because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I pretended I did, but
it's fake it till you make it. Right.
Exactly. I decided that the universe had my back and that I could do this. And I really just wanted to continue to help people find what I found, find the freedom, find the self-trust, find the self-love that you can get when you step away from drinking. And so it was a hard decision. And I did not make that decision with my brain. If I had pulled my brain into it too hard, my brain probably would have said, no, girl, go back.
You're not doing this.
We're not doing this. We're going to earn a steady income. So it was just all kind of gut and heart that got me into the private practice.
Wow. What does coaching look like? You don't have to give away the secret sauce, but
okay.
Focused on women, I mean, what does your coaching approach compare to others? And I love the energy work. I love the universe has my back. You are speaking my language, girlfriend. But talk to us on that, because it's a hard decision for women, especially, to decide like, yo, I do have a problem, or say, oh, I don't have a problem. What is it? I can stop anytime. It's not a problem.
How does my coaching differ? I think a lot of us in this space right now have transitioned from this idea of over drinking being a choice, that the addiction is a choice. And we've really pushed things, and more so in the last, 5 years, even since I started doing this, but we've really pushed things toward this idea of like, you have to love yourself sober. You can't hate yourself sober, because the more that we beat ourselves up, the more that we, self-deprecate and self-flagellate and, attack ourselves, that just makes us want to drink more because we feel bad about ourselves. And so we drink to numb that out. And so I think that's one of the first things that I kind of bring to light for people is, again, not your fault, but your responsibility. And when you take responsibility for it, it's not this idea of just beating the hell out of yourself until you stop drinking. It is really loving yourself enough that you don't want to keep betraying yourself. So I do a lot of values work because drinking really bumps up against your values when you're over drinking in a lot of ways. And I do a lot of self-compassion work. I think that's incredibly important. But I also have a really structured and organized approach. So I have a workbook that I share with all my clients that has exercises in it that we go through. Some of them we do together. Some of them they do on their own as homework. And then we start to, layer in these practices that support you. And the practices, again, are things like lemon water in the morning instead of jacking your system up with caffeine first thing, meditating, bringing all your awareness kind of into yourself and learning to sit with that and to trust whatever's coming up for you. And we layer in things that make sense to the person that I'm coaching. So it's not like I can tell them what to do. I can say, you've got to drink hot lemon water and meditate and do yoga 5 days a week, and then you'll be sober. It'll work for a minute, and then it stops working because that's not where their heart is. And so a lot of my work too is really kind of digging in and asking the questions that get people to bring up their own idea of healing, because we all know what we need to do in order to, actualize. Like, we all know somewhere deep down. And my work, I really feel like, is just uncovering that and really trying to help people to trust that still small voice that they can hear when they stop drinking and heal from that place.
That's incredible. And it's a great point to bring up. I'm still stuck on liking yourself sober because it's so true. And I think women especially, we're so hard on ourselves, let alone having families, or, hey, you need to have the career and have the family, and, hey, you need to be cooking and cleaning and all the societal things they tell us we need to do. So where do you see, and I don't know if it's a systemic thing, but where do you see the pressures from alcohol kind of come? Or maybe you could share your own stories of, you were ready. You woke up January 2nd and we're like, I'm done. I need to be done with this. So what kind of led up to that? Or are you saying, that's it, I'm ready? You can't teach that.
No, and you can't force that.
Right.
I think, that's one of the things that I come up against a lot is you can't force people to be ready to be sober. I say I come up against it a lot, but really most of the women that I work with are self-selectors. They're at a point where they're ready to look at their relationship with alcohol and to make changes. But when you kind of look at the broader landscape, there are a lot of people out there that aren't ready in that way. But I think we are under so much pressure as women, like tremendous pressure. And like you said, we've got to work, we've got to raise kids, we've got to keep the house clean, we've got to make sure there are nutritious meals on the table. It's too much. And I love the women that went before us and paved the road for us to be able to do all the things we're doing. And we can't do it all. I'm a firm believer that you cannot do it all. You will go crazy. And people will, I know that there are probably people out there listening that are like, what, that's ridiculous. I can do it all. And maybe I have yet to meet somebody who can do it all in a healthy way. I hope I didn't just piss people off.
I started with you speak your truth, and you know who I am as a person. Right.
That is my truth. That is my truth.
Yes, that is your truth.
So it was trying to juggle all the things that society tells us have to be done. And it was too much for me. And so I was drinking so that I had the energy at night to get through dinner, to get through baths, to get through bedtime, like all these things. I was drinking so that I could handle it, so that I could manage it. And then, obviously that spirals into a really bad situation. But I really think that's an important piece of recovery too, is figuring out, and again, this is why I do the values work, figuring out what are the things that really light you up? What are the things that you can delegate? What are the things that you have to do yourself? What are the things that you can teach your kids to do? Totally off subject, but blows my mind how many women come in and they're like, yeah, I've got a 15-year-old kid and I'm making him eggs every morning for breakfast. And I'm like, what? 15? Make his own damn
what?
eggs.
I was babysitting at 12. I think 10.
Exactly.
What was I? Yeah. No.
No shame to mothers that are doing that, because that's what we feel like we need to do to like take care of our kids. And maybe that's really fulfilling for some people, but then something else has to give. Like something has to give somewhere. You know, what I figured out, I had to rearrange my life in a way that my nervous system could live and live without a substance, without escaping. And it's a tough thing to do.
It's interesting too. And I think what I'm gathering from this is you are forcing women, not actually physically forcing them, but you are forcing women to take the time to do self-reflection, to understand what you are. And I loved the book, The Giving Tree, growing up. Shel Silverstein, everyone should read it if you haven't. But it's the concept of you give and you give and you give, and then you're down to a stump as this beautiful tree, and then you're withered down to nothing. So it's just interesting. Even more so, most people are two-income households now with your partner, significant other. And we're not in the 1960s of you can be, if some people can do that, that's great. I love the stay-at-home parent role, but the pressures from this, and you need some type of relief, that it is a substance. So it makes sense. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but with this new generation, Gen Z are not the drinkers like past generations were, that we're seeing significant decrease in sales for alcohol and things across the board. So what are your thoughts on that, or how do you feel about that? Because it's staggering numbers. It's crazy to me.
It's crazy. I literally get chills. Like I have chills right now.
I do too, yes.
Thinking about it and talking about it, because it's so exciting for me. Yeah, not only are we seeing a reduction in this generation drinking, but we're seeing a reduction in alcohol sales for this generation. We're seeing an increase in sales for non-alcoholic alternatives. So there's a whole world out there of non-alcoholic spirits, of even pre-made drinks that are non-alcoholic that you can take with you. Mingle Mocktails makes them. I have a full bar of NA spirits, and I love to make mocktails. Like that is one of the things.
They're so good.
And they're so delicious.
Amazing. Yes.
They're so delicious. But I think, the fact that this generation is drinking less really hits home for me. I have a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they are in college and they're drinking. I know they are, but they're not drinking the way that I drank. They're not feeling that pressure to drink to fit in. They're not feeling like going, when I was drinking in college, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, I don't remember. I just don't even remember. And I don't see that happening with my kids. And, I'm sure there are people that'll be like, you're naive. Of course they're, drinking happily, but I really don't think they are. And it's such a beautiful thing. I sat down with my son a couple of weeks ago. He was in school. I sat down with him and I asked him, like, point blank, like, what's the drinking like? What are you drinking? Because they know I struggled, and they know that some of it's genetic, not all of it, but there's some genetic component. My son was like, Mom, I have a beer every now and then when I'm watching a game, and I go out like once a month.
Wow.
And I just feel like that's healthy. I don't demonize alcohol, because I think there are people who can drink in a way that doesn't kill them slowly inside. And I see my kids doing that they're being responsible, that their eyes are wide open. And that's the most important thing to me, that they go in with eyes wide open.
I love the parenting style of not demonizing it either, because my mom was the same way growing up. And it's having those healthy relationships, or understanding the effects of it, where you don't feel the need to rebel because our frontal lobes are not developed till our early 20s. It's like, screw this, I'm away from my parents, I'm going to go crazy. And I remember, I went to Penn State, I went to a Big Ten school. We partied, I had my time, but it's interesting. You could tell the difference of some of the kids, and even now as an adult that does work at a bar on the weekends and helps my family, you can tell the types of people that is either demonized in their household. And there's so many things with trauma and other things, lingering variables too. But the kids back to college that clearly this is their first taste of freedom. They, parents like, you're a piece of shit if you drink, that just really do that. It has the reverse effect. At least
Absolutely.
I see that.
Absolutely.
So those are great conversations to have. I mean, you can't live under a rock and assume my kids aren't doing that. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Because it's going to be no big deal. Like your son said, it's like, yeah, once in a while. And you should, not condoning that, but it's just like, you're at that age, you do what is best for you. And that's going to build that confidence. And yeah, it's just so great. So anyone that tells you you're wrong for that, send them my way and I'll take them outside because you're doing great.
Fair enough.
So as we wrap this up, what advice do you have for listeners?
Wow, I can't believe we've been talking long enough to wrap this up already.
I can keep going. I can go. We need like a series with you. Yes.
For a long time. Advice. So I think that the self-compassion is probably the biggest piece of advice. That if you are feeling like you have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, regardless of what people around you are saying, because I have a lot of clients who say, I think I have an unhealthy relationship, but nobody else sees it. That's a really, really common thing to see. If it's bothering you, if it's on your heart, trust it, because not drinking is not a punishment. Not drinking is freedom. Not drinking is giving yourself the ability to really get to know yourself. When you're in that space, again, finding a way to have that self-compassion so that you love yourself enough to not keep betraying yourself. That's kind of a first step for a lot of people. And so my other big piece of advice is get support. There's a wonderful quote by a gentleman named Johann Hari, and he says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. We can't do this alone. We really can't do this alone. And so whether you find a therapist who gets it, or you go into a rehab program, inpatient or outpatient, or you find a coach, or you join one of the many, many, many beautiful online communities right now that are coming up, get connection, get support, tie in somewhere, talk to people who understand what you're going through, commiserate, because it is hard. Like, we're talking about it kind of like it's not easy. It's hard and you need support. So self-compassion and support and trusting yourself that you really want to address this. Because I think the work that we do to get sober, or the work that I help people do to get sober, is work all human beings should be doing. We should all be doing values work. We should all be doing visioning about what life could be like if we reach our goals, in a year from now. We should all be thinking about the consequences of the decisions that we're making. And so we're just doing the work that everybody should be doing. So it's a privilege. It truly is. And that's kind of how I approach it. Like, I kind of went from, I can't drink anymore, to, wow, I don't have to drink anymore. And then I don't want to drink anymore. And it's a really nice progression. But get that support, have that self-compassion, and trust yourself, believe in yourself, because it's possible. You might sit there and think, no, it's impossible. I can't not drink. You can.
You're coming up on a decade here. I mean, that's crazy.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Whitney,
Thank
you have given me goosebumps this entire podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest. And for those of you listening, if you feel you need help or know someone that needs help, head to the show notes to work with Whitney, and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.